Hello, and welcome to another Institute for Sound Public Policy podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lynn, and today we have an amazing show, and I'm just so excited to bring two fantastic guests to you. They are Yvette Carnell and Raynard Jackson. And I'll do a quick bio on both of them and then bring them in, and we're going to get cracking. Yvette D. Carnell is president and chair of the board at the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. ADOS is American Descendants of Slaves. Before founding the organization, Yvette served as a staff assistant to United States Senator Barbara Boxer, legislative aide to Congressman Marion Barry, and as assistant to the chair of the Women's Vote Center at the Democratic National Committee. Yvette also worked as a regional field director for America's Families United, where she supervised, mobilized, and coordinated the Get Out the Vote efforts for multiple nonprofit organizations in preparation of upcoming elections. After leaving Capitol Hill, Yvette became an outspoken critic of the Black political establishment, voicing her concerns in numerous editorials, starting a political call-in show on YouTube, which is Breaking Brown, which has over 90,000 subscribers, and eventually co-founding the American Descendants of Slavery movement in 2020. In 2020, she started the ADOS Advocacy Foundation, which advocates for reparations on behalf of Black Americans who descended from slavery, and a transformative Black agenda for all Black Americans. Yvette has appeared on CNN's United Shades of Grey with Camus Bell and ABC News, and in Vox, The Intercept, The Washington Post, The Associated Press, and the front page of the New York Times. She's also conducted a reparations Q&A at Yale. Yvette grew up in Decatur, Georgia, and attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., where she earned a bachelor's degree in political science and a minor in philosophy. Yvette, great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Great. Well, our next guest is going to be Raynard Jackson. Raynard is president and CEO of Raynard Jackson and Associates, LLC, a government public relations and political consulting firm in Washington, D.C. He has a proven record of balancing public policy with fundamental freedoms associated with a free market, capitalistic society. And I'm hoping, Raynard, during the show we'll get to talk about your Black Entrepreneurs Project. He writes a weekly syndicated newspaper column in over 200 newspapers, is a political analyst for TV station WUSA 9 in Washington, D.C., and had an award-winning internet radio show, Talking Right with Raynard Jackson, which has been recognized for the past 2 years in Talkers magazine as a Frontier 50, which is really an outstanding talk media webmasters program or award. He's also hosted a nationally syndicated radio show on XM Sirius Radio. He is a native of St. Louis, Missouri, and is one of the most sought-after conservative speakers in America. He is also a frequent public speaker to college students, political and business groups, churches, and others. His views are frequently heard on the radio and TV shows like Larry King, G. Gordon Liddy, Rush Limbaugh, CBS, NBC, Fox News, the Fox News Channel, and Black Entertainment Television. Raynard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and always good to see my good friend Yvette. And Yvette, if you don't make time for me next time you're in D.C., we're going to have it out.
I haven't been there in quite some time. I haven't been there in a while. So
Well,
I see you right now. I know you're ruining young minds one college at a time.
Hey, I'm following your footsteps, Yvette.
That's great. Yeah, we are rebels in our own way, aren't we?
That's funny.
I'm really excited to have the both of you here. Yvette, you're the one who really taught me about the importance of lineage over race. And you introduced me to the ADOS movement. And, I've just been, so I'm immensely grateful to that. And we go back some time. Now, Raynard, we just met recently. I met you at CPAC and was blown away with your speech. And it's funny because you had made a claim about the upcoming election and black voters. And I asked people of mine who are in communities, ADOS communities around the country, and they all seem to substantiate what you said. So today I want to talk about the upcoming elections, the impact American Descendants of Slaves could very well have on that election. And then I want to get into other issues, how ADOS can flex its muscles, not just at grassroots, but also at the local, state, and federal levels of government. And then let's talk about the ADOS movement itself, why I think it's important for Black Americans to learn the importance of lineage and how that's just been dissipated by this whole rainbow of politics out there. So, without any further ado, I want to play you guys a clip, and I shot this in 2016 at a Politicon in Pasadena, California. It was actually my first viral video. It got like 250,000 views because I shot it and I knew what I had, and I jumped on my bicycle, rode home, put it on my computer, got it up. But this is amazing because it really speaks to what you were talking about, Raynard, at CPAC. So let me go ahead and share that. Yes. Don't want to have everyone sitting through that whole thing. Here we go.
The weakness of the Obama coalition, which a more disciplined candidate would be able to exploit. I don't. Quite extraordinary. It requires that half of every black voter vote for the Democrats. Oh no, I'm sorry, not half. 60%. Oh no, I'm sorry, not 60%. Oh, I'm sorry. 80, oh no. 90, oh no. 90 to 92% of the African Americans who go to vote have to vote for Democrats to win. Now, that is an extraordinary requirement. In other words, if you have 20 African Americans in a room and 3 of them decide to vote for Trump, the Democrats are in deep trouble. Now, I would say that if you're African American, you have a very good reason to continue voting this way. But if you are a disciplined Republican candidate, and I don't think you have one, but if you had a disciplined Republican candidate, they could make an argument. And at some point, one of them will. And the taking for granted of the black vote, which has gone on for way too long in the Democratic Party, that will at some point, if something is not done, come back to bite somebody in the butt. I just don't think that Donald Trump has his teeth in.
All right, guys. Wow. Raynard, can we start with you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, Van is one of the few black Democrats that I will say I have respect for because I think he's a thoughtful thinker. Now, he says a lot of crazy stuff in between all that, but his analysis on that particular point with Ann Coulter was right on point. And the biggest fear I have, Kevin and Yvette, is I'm not one who believes a lot in polls. All the campaigns I do across the country, if pollsters were dependent on me, they would be bankrupt because I don't believe in spending money on polling simply because you should already know what you believe and how to move people. My biggest fear if you're going to believe the polls, that Trump is getting north of 25% of the black vote for his reelection as it stands now. My biggest fear is Republicans have not made a closing argument. They have not closed the deal. Yeah, blacks are pissed about Biden and his policy, illegal immigration, the homosexual push and things like that, but they don't view us as a viable alternative. Mm-hmm. And when you see buffoons out there around Trump, black buffoons like the Candace Owens, the Diamond and Silks, when you have groups called N-words for Trump, that's offensive as hell to people like me. And I'm part of Team Trump. And so Trump needs to pivot from this mentality of why is it that conservatives, when they think of engaging with black folks, why is it always their default position to go to the hood? That's offensive. When are they going to meet with the black businessmen? That's the gateway into the black community. And if you look at the composition of the black church, the chairman of the deacon board and the chairman of the board of trustees is typically the black entrepreneur. So if you get the businessman on your side, he'll bring you the pastor who will bring you the congregation. So, but Trump has got to talk to the black businessman incessantly. He's got to talk about that as much as he does the 2020 election.
But it sounds like that's like how you would approach any political bloc, correct?
Well, no, because remember, the Republican Party, the conservative movement, and MAGA, they have what I call a damaged brand. And until you rehabilitate the brand, you can't even get the message across. One of the things my grandmother used to tell me years ago was, boy, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a damn thing you're saying.
True.
That's the problem with conservatism. And so they got to have credible blacks out there speaking in support of Trump. They can't have a Candace Owens. She has no connection to the black community. She's a buffoon. You have to have credible blacks. And who are the most credible blacks? It's not the preacher, it's the black entrepreneur.
Interesting. Yvette, your thoughts?
Well, I would argue that, and let me get back to that number, that 92%. You need that 92%. That number is very important. But I would argue that neither party has reputable ADOS people. When I say American Descendants of Slavery, the institution, I would argue that neither party has that. When you look over the Democratic Party, you had Fat Joe, the rapper, meeting with Vice President
A Hispanic, Yvette, a Hispanic.
Well, he was meeting on our behalf. He was talking about marijuana reform. You had Glorilla over there sharing pictures and that sort of thing. So I would argue that their entryway in terms of the Democrats is through the black celebrity or the ADOS celebrity, and that is not a proper entryway either. They're not talking to economists. They're not talking to. I understand we're talking about the black businesses. We're not talking about how the SBA during the Obama administration gave like 1% of loans to ADOS business owners. So I would say that as well. But that number is very interesting, Kevin, that you shared in terms of Ben Jones saying you got to have that 92%. Well, right now I just listened to a podcast from Vox saying that right now, 10 to 11% of the people, quote unquote, black people they polled said that they would vote for Trump. And what they're doing, they're saying that, oh, that number's wrong, that polling is wrong. And I agree with Raynard in the sense that a lot of times polls are wrong. But if that poll is right, they have a problem. And I would not just discount that poll. I would ask why. And one of the reasons, the answer that I would give to that why question for the Democratic Party is, listen, you all have not given us an agenda. Even when we say, hey, you have to do something specific for ADOS, people who can trace their roots back to chattel slavery, who have been oppressed in this country for 400 years, when we say you have to do something about that, the answer to that is we're doing stuff for disadvantaged people. We're doing stuff for disadvantaged communities. They are never willing to give us or afford us any kind of specificity the way they do everyone else. Even I don't care whether you're talking about the black farmers, everybody end up being for disadvantaged farmers. When you talk about all of those things, no one wants to talk about specificity for us. So you have a problem. I think a lot of that Trump vote is sort of a protest vote for people who are realizing, partly because of the movement, the ADOS movement, part of we have nationwide chapters. People are sort of realizing if I'm going to be agenda driven, it has to be very specific for me and my community. We have to get something specific, not just saving America or not just saving democracy. It has to be a specific exchange. Voting is an exchange. I get agenda items. You promise you're going to do something for my specific agenda and collective uplift, right? And that's just not happening with the Democratic Party. And the problem that they have now is that we've caught on to it.
Wow. You made me. I'm going to play a quick clip of yours from a couple months ago from your podcast. And you were lambasting the government, prioritizing immigrants over our most vulnerable citizens. I'll pull this up.
Order since last spring. The effort may ultimately cost as much as $4 billion over the next 2 years and could result in cuts to city services, the mayor has warned. For migrants, the housing, while at times imperfect, has provided welcome respite as they begin to eke out new lives in a frenetic city. Now I want you to understand something. Did you all see that $4 billion number? Every time we have a conversation in this country about what we need and what we're owed, people start talking about we don't have the money, we don't know where to find. It's a budget deficit, there's a hole in the budget.
But I thought you just nailed it. I mean, here we are giving billions, planning to give billions more immigrants, or 100 billion, ultimately 120 billion to Ukraine. We can't give the money fast enough away. And yet here we are. American Descendants of Slaves are still waiting. Is it appropriate to say 40 acres and a mule, or?
I'll tell you what is appropriate to say. We are devaluing citizenship in this country.
Oh, I bet you're breaking up a little bit.
Something went out. Yeah, something went out. I can see myself on my end.
Okay, you're a little fuzzy now, whereas before you were coming in fine.
Let's see if it fixes itself.
It is. It's coming back.
Okay, we're back.
Wonderful.
Okay, we're back. You're going to have to edit that. Sorry, Kevin. But I think one of the things that's always happened, right? We're devaluing citizenship now. One of the things ADOS has always fought for, you come from slavery, you want to be a full citizenship. And when we get to the point where we feel like maybe we're starting to make some progress, people tell us citizenship doesn't matter. So you're going to pay just as much money. You're going to, I see places now they're trying to allow people who are in this country illegally to vote. We are devaluing citizenship. Citizenship is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to mean that you come first because you are an American citizen. And what we see in this country is that from our perspective as ADOS, we have never had full citizenship. And now other people are coming across the border and getting ahead of the line. And nobody wants to talk about it. So you have Democrats who are deciding that we're going to be silent about this issue. We used to have Bernie Sanders talking about it. Barack Obama talked about it. They used to be on the same side as Republicans, on the same side as Trump on a lot of these things, and all of a sudden they don't want to talk about it anymore. And I think that's because they are bowing to capitalism and white capitalists who want to exploit labor. This has nothing to do with them being benevolent and the love and we just want to care for people. This has everything to do with devaluing citizenship so certain companies can exploit labor and drop the wage floor for American workers.
Yeah, and they do that time and again. They do it in the skilled areas, the semi-skilled areas. We have all these employment visas, H-1B, L-1, OPT on the skilled side, H-2A, H-2B, open the door to illegal aliens on the semi-skilled side. I just think it's open season on the American citizen.
Well, it absolutely is. And the problem is that the media has shut out this conversation, right? So the only place, I did a Twitter search yesterday, the only place you saw people talking about this was the right. You didn't see anybody, there was no Democrat talking about this. Now, we know from the data that illegal immigration displaces displaces black workers. They didn't do disaggregation, but we know that because we're 90% still. We know that it's majority ADOS. They displace us. Not only that, illegal immigration results in an increase of incarceration for us.
Yes.
So these are things that impact us and our people who are supposed to be our leaders, our journalists, our academics, all of these people, our politicians. There's a blackout. They're not talking about it. They'll talk about anything else, but they will not talk about the thing that matters the most to us, one of which is immigration. That should be a priority, and the people who are supposed to work for us are not talking about it, and I believe that's because they're a captured group. They work for Nancy Pelosi, they work for Democrats, they work for whoever. They do not work for the people. They do not work for the grassroots.
Wow. Raynard, why do you think they're this captured group?
Well, number one, I agree with everything Yvette says, and I was once told that weak people take strong positions on weak issues. Kevin and Yvette, you know this better than anyone. The Black Caucus is the largest voting bloc in Congress to this day, and they have been for decades. In the United Nations, sub-Saharan African countries, 54 votes is the largest voting bloc in the UN. They can control the agenda. They can force action if they had a legislative agenda. And neither bodies ever vote as a voting bloc. How is it that you got a black mayor in Chicago, black mayor in St. Louis, my hometown, black mayor in New York, Baltimore, San Francisco, Los Angeles? How is it that a black mayor is paying more attention to the black community, to illegals than he is the black community? And the guy up in Chicago, he told black folks what he was going to do during the campaign. He told them, and he's doing exactly what he told them to do, that he was going to do. And they went out and voted for him versus the white guy. And anyway, so one part of me said, we as black, we get what we deserve. I tell folks when I'm speaking to businessmen, you don't get what you deserve out of life. You get what you negotiate. And Yvette was talking about an agenda. The problem is, Yvette, these black groups, the NAACP, the Urban League, Congressional Black Caucus, they have no agenda. And so Jim Clyburn, who I have an immense amount of respect for what he's done historically, how is it that Biden said in public all the time, if it was not for Jim Clyburn, I would not be president? And he wanted to get a black to be Secretary of Commerce. We had to settle for HUD with Marshall Fudd. Why is it that we are relegated to certain positions in a presidential cabinet? Where is the hammer that Jim Clyburn had? Where is the Black Caucus say we are not getting our first? We average 92% on the presidential level of support for Democrats in the black community. 92% is a historic average. Wouldn't you think if I did a column years ago about if the black vote was a corporation, they would be the largest shareholders of the Democratic Party. And when you issue a dividend in stock from a Fortune 500 company, dividends are determined by, in pecking order, who has the largest share, and it goes down from there. We are the largest voting bloc in the Democratic Party, and yet we're below illegals when it comes to the dividend distribution, meaning government services, appointments, programs, and things like that. And that's our fault. We have folks who are what I call media appointed leaders who are representing white liberals' orthodoxy versus the black community. That is the problem.
Interestingly, when I was living in California, I was there during the ouster of Gray, who was governor, and then Schwarzenegger took his, in the recall election, took his place. And the only block of voters that stayed loyal to Gray were the black voters in California. Amazing to me.
And what have they got to show for it?
Actually,
Nothing.
Less than nothing, because I believe in Los Angeles, the number of American Descendants of Slaves has slipped from when I got there in the mid 90s to like 11.4 to like 9.8 today. So in a democracy, if there's fewer of you, you get less representation. So they're even
Well,
worse
that's
off.
not true. Homosexuals are estimated to be about 2% of the population. They get almost 90+% of the goodies from the Democrats. 2% of the population.
Amazing.
We are 13% of the population, almost 40% of the voting bloc in the Democratic base. Where is our dividend worth 40%? Where is that? We can't even get HBCUs to get funded under Obama, Biden, Bill Clinton. Isn't it amazing that HBCU presidents will tell you this privately? They don't have the guts to say this publicly. They get more funding under Republican president from old man Bush, George W. to Donald Trump. More funding under Republican administration than they do Democratic administration. And yet these HBCU presidents continue to be in the tank for Democrats. Now you tell me how many other ethnic groups vote against their own interests.
My God, that's amazing. Why do you think that? What I mean, historic black colleges and universities, that's been the entree of ADOS into the professions. Why would the Democrats not be eager to support that, do you think?
Well, let me, and I agree with what Raynard said there, but the question is, why haven't we demanded that? Right?
There you
Because
go. Yep.
because I remember this well. I don't know if you all will go back and remember the beginning of the Obama administration and the months leading up to it. He chose Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, to be his pit bull for the White House. And I remember Dr. Cornel West and Tavis Smiley going around and saying he needs a black agenda. And Reverend Al Sharpton got in the way of that by saying, I don't even know. I ain't seen a black agenda. Now, wait a minute. Hold on. Slow this down. Al Sharpton has been one of the quote unquote leaders of the black community for a very long time. For a very long time. Right? That's what he has been. That's his position. I am leader of this community. He's telling you we don't have an agenda. Well, if we don't have an agenda, Al Sharpton, is your fault. We should have an agenda. If we don't have an agenda, it's your fault. So one of the problems that we have had is that we have had poor leadership. And when people have demanded an agenda, they get beat back by people like Al Sharpton, who says, well, why didn't you ask Bill Clinton for that? Yeah, you're right, Al Sharpton. We should have asked Bill Clinton for that, and we didn't. But if we're trying to fix it now, why are you getting in the way? And so we had someone at Al Sharpton who was there really to amplify the president. He amplified the voice of Obama. He was there every day on his TV show with Obama's talking points. That is not a leader of grassroots people. That is not a leader of movements. That's a person who works for the White House. And sometimes we confuse those things. We confuse people who work with the White House with people who work for the people. You cannot have two masters. You can only have one master. And we have not had advocacy that are advocates who are specific to us and for us. We have had people who work for particular Democrats, whether it's the White House, whether it's Pelosi, no matter who it is, they work for a particular set of Democrats and not us. When that happens, we don't get our needs met. That's just the way it is.
You know, interesting you say that. Speaking of advocates, I'll share a screen with you. Make sure I have it up there. Okay. It seems Nicole Hannah-Jones has found religion. And she's just recently in this New York Times article called The Color Blindness Trap, How Civil Rights Ideal Got Hijacked. She's essentially saying what the two of you are saying. Let me go back to R3. Can I get there? I'm sorry, I'm having oh, there we go. We're back. Right. And so she's talking about what the two of you have been advocating for years. But it's like, oh, she just stumbled upon this. Why is that? Why isn't this, what's going on at the grassroots, not making its way up to people in the, let's call it ivory towers, or those that have been selected to carry the message?
Well, can I take
Well,
this? I'm sorry, Renaud. I have a personal
No, go ahead,
animus.
Yvette.
I have a particular animosity for this because this is how our movements always get co-opted, right? So what
Yep.
happens is somebody on that level sort of they decide they're going to steal our talking points. Because if you go back to the earlier Nicole Hannah Jones, the Nicole Hannah Jones from 2018, 19, 20, she was oppositional to ADOS. She was the one when we said we're a specific group and we're ADOS, and we have a particular lineage and experience in this country that is very different from Black immigrants. She came in and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you all wouldn't claim Shirley Chisholm like she doesn't have Black parents. I can't believe you all are talking about the right kind of Black." And we were like, "No, we're not talking about the right kind of Black. They're Black. We're talking about lineage." So after studying that for a while and studying ADOS and studying the ADOS movement, she, instead of saying this movement has created something and I want to help and I want to contribute, she said, "This is mine now. This is my intellectual thought." And so that's how our movements always get co-opted, though. These people who are a part of these Ivies or whatever you want to call them, they go and they say, "I'm going to write a book about this." And they go to all the galas with the liberals and they swirl wine and they talk and they do stuff, but they never do any work for the people. They just walk around and collect speaking fees, and they don't do any advocacy, and they only go so far. Nicole Hannah Jones will never go as far as I went. She will adopt our language and say, "Oh, this thing is necessary." She will lift up all of our concepts, right, that she used to argue against. But when it comes time to actually oppose and have the fight, she's not going to have the fight. She only wants to collect the speaking fees. And whether you talk about Ferguson, whether you talk about Black Lives Matter, there's a lot of this thing going on where people come and they champion or they pretend to champion something that was at the grassroots. They get the bag of money and they run off. And that's how our movements die all the time.
Yeah, I agree with Yvette. And Kevin, I sent you an email a few minutes ago. If you have access to it, there's a clip in there. The last time I met with Trump in the White House, it's like 90 seconds long. You may find that instructive for this conversation. But the problem is with number one, who are the white leaders? I actually should report on a TV show recently, and she was stunned because she had no answer. Just like there are no white leaders, why is it that what I call media appointed leaders, Yvette Sharpton and Mark Mario, those are appointed by the media? Black folks didn't say represent us, because when you look at the composition of these media appointed leaders, there's a great disconnect between what they tell white folks and what the grassroots are saying. There is no connection between the two. And so these media appointed leaders tell powers that be what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And Yvette, show me any other group that goes around talking about the Black community agenda and saying, and people of color. No, we're the only group that you never hear the Asians talk about and others, or the Hispanics and others. It's only us. And we are, for example, I did a column back in last June when the Supreme Court basically banned affirmative action. People were stunned that I came out in support of the Supreme Court. And you know why? My godfather actually wrote the law that we now know as affirmative action. Art Fletcher, who was the highest ranking Black in the Nixon administration, Black. He was the top guy in the Labor Department. He actually wrote the law. I spent over 30 years of my life sitting at his feet. And affirmative action was never meant for white women, white middle-class suburban women, number one. Number two, why is it that someone from Nigeria comes to America, becomes a citizen, and now that person is eligible for all these programs? They had never been sick by a dog in the 50s and 60s. They've never had a water hose sprayed on them. They've never been to jail because of their parents and grandparents wanting the right to vote. So we have allowed other folks to step on our shoulders to get a benefit they didn't deserve, nor have they earned. Affirmative action, and this is one of the things my good buddy Ann Coulter and Laura Ingraham have been saying for decades on the record, that they all have said Blacks are the only folks who should have ever been eligible for affirmative action. And I took it a step further and said, and then even at that, it should be for a limited period of time. At what point do we say America is so diverse that we don't need affirmative action and all these other race-based programs? And I say that time is now, because what? Over 40% of America is a minority. So over the next few years, white folks are going to be in the minority. And so I think this whole notion, every time blacks get a benefit specific to them, the media appointed leaders broadened it out so much to become open to women, homosexuals, transsexuals, naturalized Americans. I mean, all these programs that were set up for us, we are at the bottom of the list. I mean, you got illegals in this country who are at a higher pecking order on diversity than native black folks. Now, explain that one to me.
Crazy. Do you think it was done on a dare then? It's like, well, the forces that may not have wanted civil rights legislation said, well, let's open it up to everyone almost.
Well, you know that.
And-
Oh, it was by design. It was by design.
Yeah, and the women part came in at the end. It was actually came in as almost like a joke. The women being added came in at the very end of it. Wasn't even supposed to happen. That was almost like a fluke, right? And the funniest thing about white women being the main beneficiaries of affirmative action is that they never have to hold a bag. Nobody ever says like, give that back. You're stealing and you're just lazy. Nobody, that gets said to us. And the other thing is, when you're talking about American descendants of slavery, the affirmative action was supposed to be redress. People forget that LBJ made his speech at Howard University about affirmative action because it was supposed to be about us. And he said, we've done so much to you. We've done so much to this group of people. You can't just start from the starting line. You need help. And he was talking to us. He wasn't talking to white women. He wasn't talking to black immigrants. And even when you talk about black immigrants, they were not here in any real number until the Immigration Act of 1965. Most Africans were not here until 2000. So we have suffered from 1865, really from 1619, the beginning of slavery, 1865, and then you have Reconstruction, sharecropping, convict leasing, mass incarceration, all of those things. That's supposed to be redressed for us. It's not supposed to be for someone who got here in 2001. It's not supposed to be for someone who got here in 1995 or 1985. They were never supposed to be included in that. So our redress has been bastardized and spread so thin that it has ceased to be effective. And if anybody ever asks me, like, well, when do we get rid of it? Well, when we close the lineage wealth gap, not the racial wealth gap. It's not about whether or not you have melanin. The lineage wealth gap with people that tie back to slavery. And Ann Coulter is correct when she says we are the only people that are owed something in America. America doesn't owe you something just because you came here and you have melanin. That you can go back to your homeland if that's the case. But America owes something to the people who were enslaved and their ancestors who came from them and built this country. America owes something there. And so that's kind of where we are with it.
Interesting. Do you, when looking at this in terms of how we should change things from a policy standpoint, how would you both think that we should proceed? Is this a legislative, something that has to be legislated, or culturally, because our institutions are failing us and we can't really rely on them? How do we fix this?
Well, it's not complicated. I mean, yeah, we need legislation. But again, if you all are too young, especially you, Yvette, to remember the Wizard of Oz or the Wiz movie, isn't it amazing that the Oz never gave nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have? Here, you got the Congressional Black Caucus that had over 60 votes, the largest voting bloc in Congress. If you don't know how to wield power, it has nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with you being incompetent. Again, Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, the prosecuting attorney she's on her way to jail. When she got caught up in her legal situation, she blamed it on racism. Fannie Lewis, what's her name? Down in Georgia. Fannie Willis. She's blaming her problem on racism and MAGA Trump radical extremists. It's like no one told you to go to sleep with this dude. I mean, so as opposed to taking responsibility for our own situation, Congressional Black Caucus, why don't you use those 60 plus votes and tell Biden and tell Trump, tell Obama, tell Bill Clinton that we're not moving one piece of legislation until we get 2 or 3 of our agenda items met. So if that means shut down the government, so be it. If that means us telling our folks to vote Republican to prove a point to you, so be it. But we are not moving the congressional legislation through until we get what we want. Same thing in the United Nations with the 54 African votes there. When are we? So a lot of times we sit and ask white folks to do for us what we can do for ourselves. We got the votes. Here you got a black mayor of Chicago, Baltimore, New York, St. Louis, Los Angeles, San Francisco. And why is it that the economic indices in the black community in all these cities have not improved? We haven't seen black folks benefit from black elected leadership since the days of Marion Barry, who's a dear friend of mine, Yvette, and my godfather, Raynard Jackson, the first black mayor of Atlanta. We need politicians of that ilk who knew how to use the levers of power. Without Marion Barry, there would be no Bob Johnson. There would be no BET. Bob Johnson and his wife Sheila would not be billionaires. It was Marion Barry that created BET on behalf of Bob Johnson. So it was Maynard Jackson who created R.J. Russell Construction Company in Atlanta back in the 70s, which is why he's one of the wealthiest guys in America, all because of Maynard Jackson understanding how to use the political levers at his disposal as mayor. So we don't need white folks for anything. We have to understand how to play the game. We have everything we need to change all these pathologies to make the black community better. And if we are not willing to exercise that power and authority, then shame on us.
Yvette, you
Well, I will say, oh, I'm sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. We were talking
I will
earlier
say
about
one thing.
McCarthy and how it
Yeah,
took just
McCarthy. Well,
8
yeah, because
Republicans
8
to oust the
Republicans voted.
speaker. Yet,
Yes, so you only need a few. And what I will say too, and Raynard, I'll be 49 at the end of this month, so I remember. But here's what I will say. Here's what we do need from white folk. White folk have nearly all the wealth. And that's part of the reason that you have these Congressional Black Caucus people feeling so captured. That's not an excuse, though. What I will say is this. I would rather Nancy Pelosi tell you, because you all, when you have nearly all the wealth, what that means is that your community, you don't have friends who have $1 million here, 500 there. You don't have friends who have that kind of social capital. So you are beholden to the Democrats who are holding the purse strings for the party. What I will say is this. I would rather you not get elected again. If them holding that purse string will not get you elected again, I would rather you fall on your sword. At least then I can go to people and say, why don't we have any CBC? Why don't we have any ADOS lawmakers? Why are we not there? Because what you are right now is sort of an apparition. You are in the way. You provide the illusion of inclusion. We look like we have real political power when really and truthfully you are just a tool of a party, and you're not willing to say out loud, listen, my people, I'm not doing anything, because then Nancy Pelosi and all the Democratic PACs will not give me money, and you don't have none for me to give. I would rather you say that out loud and make that case and then get swept out. And then we can say, listen, look, this is the true face of not being included. If you are not going to do what is necessary for your community, I would rather you not be there, instead of behaving like you are and really just doing absolutely nothing for us. That is an illusion. So I don't like the illusion of inclusion. I do understand the limitation of being wealthless in a wealthy country. I totally understand that limitation. But don't get over there and act like that's not a limitation, because what you were saying, Kevin, when you talked about McCarthy and how he did that, we talked about that whole election for the speaker and how all that stuff went. It was only 8 votes that you needed to peel off to do something, right? So I don't understand when we're talking about stuff that we need to get legislation and we need to get passed and different things like that, while we can't have 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 or 15 to just move in a certain direction and take whatever risk comes with that to do something for the people. Because if you're not going to do something for ADOS, I have a hard time figuring out why you're there.
Well, let me posit this to you, Yvette and Kevin. Maxine Waters, who's from my hometown in St. Louis, who grew up with my parents, Now she represents California. She's been on the banking committee for over 20 years and was chairman the past 4 years and has been chair back and forth. How, Yvette and Kevin, how can you have a member of the Congressional Black Caucus that's chairman of one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress? And this one controls the money, literally, the banking committee. And yet black folks are still having problems with access to capital. And she's done nothing, absolutely nothing to remedy that. She's done nothing to build a coalition of folks, black, Asian, Hispanic, Indian, women, white folk, to lobby on behalf of whatever her perceived solutions are. You got Yvette and Kevin, you got several members of the Congressional Black Caucus on the Agriculture Committee of the House. Why are we still talking about black farmers not getting paid? The lawsuits are over. The courts ruled in their favor. Why has the check not been cut? And this is going all the way back from the Clinton days all the way through right now. Why have the members of the Black Caucus on the Agriculture Committee said, we are not voting for anything out of committee that the Democrats want until they address this issue? The president had the authority to tell the Department of the Treasury to write the daggone check. So again, my point is, we sit up here and spend all of our time talking about white folks and racism and what they are not doing to benefit us, when we have the ability and the power and the votes to force them to adhere to what we want if we had an agenda.
You know, it's interesting. You just said we have the votes for now. It was around 2009. I met with Maxine Waters in her office in D.C. to talk about immigration. And I was a bit disappointed because she didn't seem that eager to do anything. She was open to receiving more information. And I looked at her and I said, do you realize that, you know, you're from a black district? And she corrected me. She said, no, I'm from a Hispanic district.
Yep.
And I said, do you realize you'll be the last African-American representative for that district? And she just nodded. Like, that's not an issue. I've done my run. There's no need to pass on this office to someone else of my lineage. I mean, golly, guys, what do you think of that?
Well, there's a Reverend Cosby always tells me there's a part in the Bible where somebody tells him like your kids are going to have a lot of struggles, and I forget who the person is. Says, "Whoa, well, at least it's not me. At least it won't happen in my lifetime, right?" And so I feel like that's how they feel. Like, at least this won't happen during my lifetime. And I think a lot of these people have conceded that America is going to change. It is not going to change in a way that benefits them or their children. It's not going to change in a way that benefits citizens of this country, right? And they have sort of conceded that because their lives are good. And Maxine has conceded that. And I think Maxine is also, I remember one time Maxine was fighting against some type of Wall Street regulation that was predatory. And she was fighting against people like, I think it was people in the who were worse than, who were even worse. And so it's like, well, you think Maxine has a problem? Look at the people around her, right? So I think there has been no fight to say let's protect citizenship, because citizenship has value. The Democratic Party has decided that in order to have a coalition, they're going to bring as many disparate groups in as possible, and they're going to pass all the resources around. And they're only going to give out resources if you demand it, and everybody's demanding it. Latinos are demanding it. The LGBTQ community is demanding it. Everybody is screaming. Meanwhile, you have ADOS voters saying we just got to save democracy. Democracy is not on my back. I am not Superman. I do not wear cape. I do the work of my people and my community. And that's something, that sort of specificity, and that how we hone in, we have to figure that out. And also, like when we talk about immigration, you might have to go work with conservatives. That might be part of it. This idea that, oh my God, you can't even talk to them. They're at least half the country. Yes, you got to have that conversation. You don't let Democrats create this thing to where everybody who is a conservative, who has an R behind the name, is a boogeyman, because you have to do politics. and they know that, and that's why. That's what you saw me get. You saw them roast me for years, Kevin, talking
Yeah.
about, oh my God, you're a conservative right wing. You got money coming in from the right. Never could find the money because it never was here. But that's how you get slandered if you decide you want to do real politics and have real negotiations with people who have political power.
It's interesting you say that because they, the old adage, no man is safe while Congress is in session. Well, they were huddled this weekend, and looks like we're going to get an appropriations bill, and it's not going to be good. So here is an opportunity to fight for border protection, force HR 2 to get pushed into the appropriations, but they don't seem to have the will. But certainly, here's an opportunity.
Yeah, and again, and until we as blacks start forcing a dividend distribution from Democratic Inc. and for Republican Inc. Isn't it amazing that blacks, on average, we average 9% vote for Republicans during presidential years, and yet, how is it that we always get a disproportionate number of goodies from Republicans if we're going to play the numbers game? For example, isn't it amazing when almost without notice that under George W. Bush, we had successive back-to-back black secretaries of state, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice. We had a black national security advisor, Colin Powell, under Bush. The first black to serve in a Republican cabinet, Bill Coleman, 1975, Gerald Ford appointed him to be Secretary of Transportation. Why is it that we get in the Republican side a disproportionate share of that dividend based on the numbers versus the Democrats are 400, 500 times the amount of vote and clout in the Democratic Party, but yet they get less than what we get on the Republican side. And it's like, why am I the only one seeming to notice something like that? And again, the Democrats' position is they think being wealthy or affluent is a dirty word. So they spend all the money relative to the black community on social programs, SNAP programs, welfare, food stamps. All blacks are not poor. Matter of fact, most blacks are not poor.
Well, you really made me think of something, Yvette.
Yeah.
You did a podcast a few years ago, and you spoke about the importance of intergenerational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of where Raynard might ultimately be going. There's a big difference between, if you want to, can you talk about that for a moment and how it impacts ADOS, but frankly, anyone?
Well, and this is probably, and this is a legitimate disagreement. That most, if you go by the data, most ADOS are working class poor, and by that you don't mean live in the ghetto necessarily, but by that you mean we don't have real wealth to speak of. We're not, there was this great article in the New York Times actually about inherited wealth, and we're about to experience one of the greatest wealth transfers in the history of this country, and we're going to get nearly none of it, because most of the quote unquote wealth that we have is held in the hands of boomers and is held in the house. So if you're lucky, your parent may have a house and that's all. You're not going to get anything
Right.
passed down in terms of inheritance. And so part of the reason when you talk about reparations, people say, why is that? It doesn't make sense. Well, because we're inheriting poverty, right? When you talk about the land theft, when you talk about the theft of farms, that's part of the reason we're not passing down anything. That's part of the reason we don't have any inheritance, because the inverse is happening, where other people were allowed to be on the board and not used by the board. They're inheriting wealth, and we will be inheriting nothing. And this is an era in the world where wealth is everything, because wages are falling back. They're bringing in the immigrants to have the jobs and to bring down the wage floor. You're not going to make it up in wealth anymore. You have to have inheritance. And we were used to build other people's wealth. That's what it was. First we were enslaved, and then we didn't have any rights after that, right? So if somebody comes say, I want that mule, I want that farm, or then we have history of discrimination against the farmers. So, our ADOS farmers. So then you have to create a system in which you can capture that back. And for whatever reason, we are just not fighting for that. We don't see that as a problem. We don't see it as nearly a problem and a perversion that white people have nearly all the wealth, and that is not an exaggeration. Now, I think, it was a few years ago, and it's probably worse now that the average black family was worth 1,700. It's worse now, right? And so that is what we're talking about in terms of what we need. But I'm also in favor of one of my biggest criticisms of the Obama administration was how many SBA loans went to ADOS business owners. Why is you supposed to be the first black president, right? Why are we not getting those kinds of business loans? We had Busby who was over a small business during Biden. I don't know if he still is. Come and have a conversation about how Asians came and said, hey, because of the Asian hate, we get most of the business money. And he said, no, you have to look at the data. And we have had more closed businesses. So if you want those businesses to thrive, one of the reasons that our businesses are the first to close is because they can't scale because they don't have wealth. Right. So when we talk about reparations, things of that nature, yes, it has to come. We need it because we don't have generational wealth. And that is directly tied to everything from redlining to slavery to Reconstruction to everything that's been happening in this country for 400 years.
Wow, but Yvette, you got a black woman that's chairing the banking committee until last year. I mean, at what point do we say it's not so much racism keeping us back, more so that we have blacks all over the country? We have more black elected officials now than we have had in the country's history. So at what point do we say we got blacks in political power that don't know what to do with that power? That's on us. We can't blame white folks for that.
I would say that that's tokenism and not power. And black faces in high places has never necessarily, there was a great study about that black faces in high places has never necessarily benefited for us. I do believe, though, that we have not positioned ourselves, and this is where we agree, to actually force our people to do something for us. Like we have never even, if you go to adosfoundation.org, we have a black agenda. Not only a reparations framework, we have a framework, but a black agenda. You have to have that in place in terms of what your specific needs are. And then you have to have a grassroots movement to push those people in that direction. If not, they have decided that they're not going to do anything for us at all. They are going to advocate for everybody but us. As a matter of fact, they will use our political capital and use Martin Luther King and everybody else for other groups of people. So, you saw John Lewis, rest in peace, when he did his sit-in, he did it for gun rights, not reparations, right? So you do have these, if you don't have, and I believe that's the importance of political movements. If you don't have grassroots people on the ground saying, I see what you're doing, and what you're doing is not to the benefit of ADOS, and I'm going to hold you accountable come election day, and we're going to have somebody else eventually run against you, then you're going to have a problem. So I do agree that we have an accountability problem as it relates to our own political body, right? And our own representatives. We have a problem. We will have a problem with a lot of activists. We have a lot of problems with people who are supposed to speak for us, who actually speak for other people, and make sure that we never get a chance to speak on our own behalf as grassroots activists and people who actually speak for the people.
Great. We're coming up on our hour. Wow, time flies when you're having fun. I want to make sure, two things for each of you, that our audience knows how to find you, and are there projects that you're working on that they should be interested? I know, Raynard, the Black Entrepreneurs Project, if you could chat a little bit about that and tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yes, they can reach me at raynardjackson.com. That's my corporate website. My political is Black Americans for a Better Future, BAFBF.org, or just Google my name, Raynard Jackson. I'm all over social media. But yeah, I focus strictly on the Black entrepreneur. Everything I do is about that. I have strong positions on illegal immigration, abortion, all these other issues. But we're going to be having a series of lunches and dinners with some of the most influential business and political people. I'll probably kick it off here in D.C. next month. I bring together the most successful Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Indian entrepreneurs to D.C. And we're talking about business. This is not about diversity and welfare and all this stuff. This is about how we can increase business opportunity for these extremely successful minority entrepreneurs. But my focus is on the Black entrepreneurs, but having coalitions with other groups. So that's going to be kicked off in next month, and we'll be doing a series of them between now and the end of the year. So just go to raynardjackson.com or blackamericans4abetterfuture.org, BAFBF.org, and we'll have information on there. And one of the things I encourage Kevin and Yvette, especially if you're an entrepreneur, wherever you live at, your city councilman, state senator, state rep, U.S. congressman, U.S. senator, you should all have their personal cell phones. They should all know who you are, because these guys can make your life easy or they can make it difficult. And if you are a businessman, you should always be able to pick up the phone to call your elected officials and have them intervene on your behalf if there's an issue, or just for them to open up their Rolodex to get you introduced to the CEO of Boeing, Lockheed Martin, or whatever the big companies are in your city and town.
Great points. Great. Great. Yvette, what's going on in your world, and how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can reach me at Yvette Carnell at adosfoundation.org. Yvette Carnell, adosfoundation.org. If you want to join us, join ados.com. Adosfoundation.org itself, that has our Black agenda. If you want to know more about what we stand for, our reparations framework, it has that there. What we have been doing since 2023 is positioning national chapters, right? We're positioning chapters across the country. And we have been doing trainings with the chapters that we have so far, in terms of how to be effective locally, in terms of how to set your priorities in terms of your local and state, right? You have to set your priorities before you can even go and advocate, right? So that has been because we want to be the stuff we talk about. So we talk about, we have to hold these politicians accountable. ADOS, the foundation, is the vehicle that we're using to do that. So ADOS Foundation, we're also working on an institute to actually do research specific to ADOS. We also have the ADOS Empowerment Project, which is a C3 instead of a C4, that will do some other things on the ground as well. But listen, we would love for everybody to get involved in our chapters. We would love to collaborate with people who are willing to collaborate us on some things that we do agree on, and that's what we're doing. Our goal, is to become the premier civil rights organization in America and supplant and replace the NAACP and the National Action Network. That's where we are.
Wow, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you both so much. We just lost Raynard. Raynard, I'm sorry. But I want to say thank you very much. This was amazingly informative. I know my audience is really going to appreciate your insights. And to my audience, I'd like to say, for those watching this video, if you liked it, be sure to smash us with a thumbs up, and also subscribe. Leave a comment, but subscribe so that you'll be notified when we do future podcasts. And so, Yvette and Raynard, wherever you are, his battery probably ran out. And actually, pretty good timing. I want to thank you so much again. Take care.
Thank you, Kevin.